The razor business is one of the strangest in consumer goods. The product, a small piece of stamped metal, costs almost nothing to manufacture, but the economics around it are extraordinary. King Camp Gillette founded the Gillette Safety Razor Company in 1901. His insight was simple: sell the handle cheap, sell the blade expensive. Make sure men come back for the blade every month. The handle is a one-time purchase. The cartridge is a subscription you never signed up for. By 2005, the model was so valuable that Procter & Gamble paid $57 billion to acquire Gillette, the largest consumer goods acquisition in history. They were buying a perpetual license, a category where men would always need blades cheap to make, and a retail presence almost impossible to challenge. Here is how it worked. Gillette sold cartridges to retailers: Walgreens, Target, Boots. Retailers locked them in security cases because the margins made them worth stealing. Men paid $4 to $5 per cartridge because there was nowhere else to go. Retailers took roughly 30 to 40% of the price. Gillette absorbed it by keeping the product premium. That was the real barrier. Not the blade, but the shelf. Control the shelf and you control the category. For over a century, that logic held. Then, in 2011, a man at a party started asking what would happen if you simply removed the shelf from the equation. Michael Dubin had graduated from Emory College with a degree in history, and then spent 8 years studying improv comedy at the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York. He was working in digital media when, at a party in 2011, he met Mark Levine. Levine had a problem. He had imported a warehouse full of razor blade cartridges from Dorco, a South Korean manufacturer, and had no retail channel to sell them through. The retailers weren't interested in a small volume newcomer when they already had a category-dominant supplier paying for premium shelf placement. Dubin's improv training had taught him to spot the gap between what an audience expected and what it was actually experiencing. He looked at Levine's warehouse and had a thought. What if the shelf was the problem, not the solution? Men already bought razors every month. Make it an actual subscription, shipped directly to the customer, and the retailer's margin disappears from the equation entirely. The pricing logic was straightforward. Gillette cartridges cost around $4 to $5 each at retail. Dorco blades, shipped from South Korea, could land at $6 a month for the mid-tier, or as little as $3 a month for the entry-level, the Humble Twin, a 2-blade cartridge with 5 replacements. The gap between those two price points had been sitting there for decades, maintained by retail infrastructure the internet was quietly making irrelevant. They didn't need to invent a better blade. They needed a cheaper route to the same bathroom. On March 6, 2012, at 6 in the morning Pacific Time, Dollar Shave Club published a video on YouTube. Michael Dubin wrote the script himself and directed it with Lucia Aniello, an old UCB friend whose production company had worked for Estee Lauder and Audi. Total budget, $4,500. Dubin walked through a warehouse, talking to camera. Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What does Dollar Shave Club do? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. He paused. Are our blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. For the next 90 seconds, he made one argument. Gillette's blades were overpriced, and you had been overpaying without realizing it. The servers crashed within the first hour. By the end of 48 hours, Dollar Shave Club had received 12,000 orders. The video eventually accumulated 27 million views. Consider the comparison. A full-page ad in the New York Times costs approximately $150,000 for a single placement. The $4,500 video that triggered a structural shift in the U.S. razor market cost the same as roughly 1,125 Gillette blade cartridges. The video worked because it was doing two things simultaneously. On the surface, it was funny. Underneath, it was consumer advocacy. Gillette's pricing is not justified by the product, and you, specifically you, have been paying for it. The humor was the delivery mechanism. Every share was an endorsement of the thesis. A subscriber visits the website, picks a tier, enters a card number. The Humble Twin, $4 a month, 2-blade cartridge, 5 replacements. The 4X, $6 a month, 4 blades. The Executive, $9 a month, 6 blades. No shelf visit, no security case, no impulse decision at the checkout. Blades come from Dorco in South Korea. DSC buys them wholesale, packs them in branded boxes at their Venice, California warehouse, ships them to the door. When Gillette sells through Walgreens, Walgreens takes roughly 30 to 40% of the retail price. DSC eliminates that margin, keeping part of it and passing part to the subscriber as a lower price. DSC added more products on top of the blade: shave butter, post-shave lotion, wet wipes. A subscriber who started at $4 a month could become a bathroom routine customer at $15 or $20. The blade got them in the door. The bundle kept them spending. Revenue grew accordingly. In 2012, DSC generated roughly $4 million. By 2013, $19 million. By 2014, $65 million. By 2015, $152 million. A 38-fold increase in 3 years, not from a new product, but from a new distribution model applied to an existing one. By July 2016, DSC had 3.2 million subscribers, roughly 3% of the 100 million American men who shave regularly. In a mature consumer goods category, 3% switching brands in under 5 years is not gradual erosion. It is a structural event. Gillette's response was slow. When you hold more than 70% of a category and margins are strong, a startup shipping blades out of a Venice warehouse is not the most pressing item in a quarterly review. By the time the threat registered, the ground had already shifted. In 2010, Gillette held more than 70% of the U.S. razor market. By 2015, that had fallen to 59%. By 2016, 54%. 16 percentage points lost in 6 years, in a category they had dominated for a century. Each point represents hundreds of millions in annual revenue. Dollar Shave Club was not the only pressure. In 2013, Andy Katz-Mayfield and Jeff Rader launched Harry's, a second subscription razor brand. Rader had previously co-founded Warby Parker. Harry's applied the same direct-to-consumer logic and eventually struck retail deals with Target. Between the two upstarts, Gillette was compressed from every direction. In February 2017, Gillette announced price cuts of up to 20% on their cartridges, effective April of that year. For a brand whose entire identity rested on the proposition that premium performance justified a premium price, this was a public admission. Price was now a real reason men were leaving. But the deepest acknowledgement came from P&G's own accounting. In fiscal year 2019, Procter & Gamble took an $8 billion impairment charge on the Gillette brand, writing off 14% of the $57 billion they had paid in 2005. The $4,500 video had contributed to one of the largest brand impairments in consumer goods history. On July 19, 2016, Unilever paid $1 billion cash for Dollar Shave Club. DSC had 3.2 million subscribers and $152 million in trailing revenue. It was also still losing money. The company had raised $163.5 million in venture capital across 5 rounds without yet producing a profit. So what was Unilever buying? The razor margin doesn't explain the price. Consumer goods acquisitions typically run at 1 to 2 times trailing revenue. Unilever paid closer to 6.5 times. The premium implies something beyond the blades. The first thing they were buying was a customer list that consumer goods companies cannot normally build. Unilever sells through Walmart and Tesco and Carrefour. They know how many units leave the shelf. They do not know who bought them. DSC had the name, address, purchase history, and bathroom routine of 3.2 million individual customers. The second thing was operational capability. The fulfillment system, subscription billing, and digital acquisition infrastructure that DSC had built from scratch. The third was a strategic signal. The direct-to-consumer model could, in theory, extend to other Unilever categories. Razors were just the first test. Unilever CEO Paul Polman described the acquisition as part of adopting more flexible models for parts of our business that operate on the edges of our traditional model. Translation: we are not entirely sure how to use this yet, but we know we need to understand it before someone uses it against us. After the acquisition, the easiest subscribers were already signed up. By 2018, the cost to acquire a new subscriber had risen 28% year over year. The viral video had found the men irritated by Gillette's prices and willing to switch on principle. The next tier cost more to reach. Imagine you are running Dollar Shave Club in 2018. The competitor you disrupted has cut prices by 20% and is still on every shelf. Harry's has struck a deal with Target and is now in the physical retail lane you deliberately avoided. The model that felt inevitable in 2012 is now a contested market with narrowing margins and 3 serious players. On January 19, 2021, Michael Dubin stepped down as chief executive, replaced by Jason Goldberger, an e-commerce veteran and former CEO of Sur La Table. The founder's departure was the first visible signal that the integration had not gone as planned. By Q4 2022, Unilever was describing DSC in its earnings statement with notable candor. While marginally profitable, Dollar Shave Club continued to decline in a fiercely competitive market. The performance of Dollar Shave Club has not met our expectations. That is, a public company telling its shareholders a billion-dollar acquisition had underperformed. In October 2023, Unilever sold 65% of Dollar Shave Club to Nexus Capital Management for an undisclosed price, almost certainly a fraction of the $1 billion paid in 2016. Unilever retained 35%. The direct-to-consumer playbook proved considerably more expensive to operate at scale than it had been to acquire. So who won the razor wars? In one sense, Dollar Shave Club. Dubin and Levine built from a $4,500 video to a $1 billion exit in 4 years. Investors who put in $163 million got back roughly 6 times their money. In another sense, Gillette. The brand still exists, still holds the largest share of the U.S. razor market. The price cuts were painful, and the write-down was embarrassing. But Procter & Gamble did not sell Gillette. 120 years of equity proved more durable than a viral video. In a third sense, Unilever lost. They paid $1 billion for a business their own earnings statements later described as declining and underperforming, and eventually sold the majority stake for an undisclosed, almost certainly lower, price. But what Dollar Shave Club proved permanently is something more specific. The thing Gillette had been protecting for a century was not the blade, it was the shelf. Razor blades were never a technological mystery. They were a distribution mystery. Gillette's real moat was the retail relationship, the security case, the advertising that made men feel their face required something premium. Once someone removed the shelf from the equation, demonstrated that the bathroom was reachable by a subscription box, the logic of the whole category changed. Michael Dubin did not invent a better razor. He invented a better route to the bathroom. For 4 years, that was worth exactly $1 billion.